Hello everybody, thank you for joining me today for another Twilight Zone video in my Twilight Zone ranking series where I rank every episode of the original Twilight Zone from my least favorite to my favorite. Today I'm going to be talking about number 48, Spur of the Moment, written by Richard Matheson and directed by Elliot Silverstein. This is a season 5 episode, and as always there will be spoilers. So some of the Twilight Zone fans out there are probably surprised that I have Spur of the Moment rated this well on the list. And honestly, I'm a little surprised at where I have it ranked as well because I've seen this episode a few times before. And I thought it was fine, but nothing great. And then I rewatched it, and I really liked this episode a lot on this rewatch. As a matter of fact, this episode was definitely one of the most improved for me and probably moved the most spots on the list of any episode. So one thing I really love about Spur of the Moment is the concept, and I also think Diana Hyland is really good in the lead as Ann Henderson, and the rest of the acting, while admittedly not great, doesn't really hurt the episode in my opinion. I also thought the cinematography in this episode was particularly good, and I thought the score was really a standout as well. So this episode starts out with a young woman named Anne, and she's out riding a horse until she encounters a mysterious woman in black who seems like she's going to attack Anne. She's yelling and very aggressive, so naturally Anne is afraid and rides off. When she gets home, she's very upset. Her parents are there and her fiance named Robert. Anne tries to explain what happened, and Robert kind of jokes about it. He admittedly doesn't handle it very well. And at this point, it seems like maybe Robert's a bit insensitive or maybe just not a good match for Anne's personality, and she doesn't really seem that attached to him either. So if there's not enough drama going on already in this episode, all of a sudden another man named David just kind of barges into the house. He basically lets himself in. He definitely wasn't invited, and he begs Anne to call off her engagement to Robert and marry him instead. And this guy really does come across as pretty desperate. This causes Robert and David to naturally argue, and Anne seems undecided and conflicted about the whole thing, and eventually her father pulls out a gun to make David leave. If all this sounds very melodramatic, you would be right, it is, and I loved every minute of it. So what I really like about the episode up to this point, and what really works for me, is that you're not really sure who Anne should marry or who she will marry. You're also not sure which guy is really right for her, and if her parents are right about the whole thing. It seems like they would obviously prefer her to marry Robert, and I think I was even a bit fooled as to what would happen when I first watched this episode. So now we go into the future, and Anne is definitely miserable. She's also annoyed with her mother, and her mother is upset because it seems like they're losing the house. Anne blames her father for not having better judgment, and her mother slaps her, and she slaps her mother back in a very shocking and intense scene, I have to say. So Anne now realizes that the crazed rider she saw all those years ago was herself, trying to warn her to marry the other man, and it turns out that the one that Anne married was David, and Robert maybe would have been a better choice after all, because we get to see David again, and he is a mess. So at this point, the older Anne once again goes out on horseback, trying to catch her younger self, and of course younger Anne is still afraid of this woman, so the older version of Anne can't catch her, so it looks like Anne will still make the wrong decision yet again. And this really affected me this time. Seeing the scene play out again, but knowing everything that happened, really makes the episode feel tragic in my opinion, and I thought it worked very, very well. Now I know you could criticize this episode by saying the older version of Anne should be calmer. It would make more sense because maybe her younger self wouldn't be frightened and she would listen. But based on what we know about what's happened in Anne's life, I think it makes a lot more sense for her to not be calm in this situation, and I actually think it makes the episode even more sad, so I thought it was effective. So much happens in this half hour. The episode is very clever in its misleads, and the twist really is very tragic and really got to me. So overall, I just think Spur of the Moment is a very fast-paced, thought-provoking episode with some great music. Maybe a little melodramatic at times, but I really like this one, and that's why it comes in at number 48. And I feel like Spur of the Moment is kind of another underappreciated Season 5 episode. As always, I would love to hear some comments on what other Twilight Zone fans think about this episode, if you liked it or not. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this episode. Thanks for your support, and thanks for watching.